Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you from London, UK, for the Women in ICT Leadership Virtual Summit hosted by 5G Americas. My name is Tamara Dancheva, and I'm a Senior International Relations Manager for GSMA. GSMA represents the global mobile industry, and we have over 1,000 mobile network operators and associate members across our ecosystem. I also serve as co-chair of the Skills Coalition of the Equals Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. Equals is the largest public-private partnership that aims to bridge the digital gender divide, and it was co-founded back in 2016 by GSMA, the International Trade Center, the International Telecommunications Union, UN Women, and UN University. And as of today, we have more than 1,000 members from across international organizations, private sector, academia, NGOs, and beyond. And last but not least, I also had the EU delegation to the Women 20 engagement group of G20, which is the third hat that I'm speaking with today. And Women 20 is the official engagement group of G20 on women and girls empowerment. Without further ado, I would like to share my screen so I can begin today's presentation. Thank you. The topic I have chosen for this virtual summit, which I think will be quite relevant for the discussions that will be held, and of course for all of you as participants, is how we can introduce a gender-transformative approach to digital skills education and training. This remains a core topic both for GSMA and of course for the Equals Global Partnership, because we have recognized that it is not sufficient to just educate and train women and girls in digital skills. We need to ensure that we are actually empowering them, that we are actually able to dismantle harmful normative barriers, in other words, harmful social norms that may prevent and do prevent actually women and girls from reaching their full potential. So therefore, this is very much a topic that we decided to focus on, and actually this arose from a joint initiative that GSMA is currently leading on with the International Telecommunications Union, Ernst & Young, and Women's World Wide Web. Now, this initiative is called Equals Her Digital Skills, and it forms our official commitment to the UN Women-led generation equality process. And the four organizations got together because we wanted to make an impactful change. And we know that no stakeholder can tackle the digital gender divide on their own. So we got together and we established this initiative with the idea, as you see from the screen, to provide access to digital skills training and e-mentoring for 1 million women and girls by 2026. Now, we didn't want, however, to establish just another digital skills initiative. We can agree that there are plenty out there. We wanted to ensure that our work is impactful. And as I mentioned at the beginning, really tackles the core of gender inequality in our society. And this is really harmful social norms and discriminatory practices that hold women and girls back, and of course, translate into the digital world. So with that in mind, Equals Her Digital Skills set about at looking at how we can deliver not just digital skills trainings and education, but gender transformative digital skills trainings and education. Now, that said, we didn't have the answer. We didn't know what that meant. There was no official definition of what we mean by a gender transformative approach to digital skills education in existing literature, and not certainly in practice. And so we set about to tackle this challenge jointly. This is how, of course, we came up with the idea of the gender transformative framework that introduces such an approach, and that I'll speak to in a second. As you see from my screen, the initiative aims to not just deliver digital skills trainings, but also, of course, e-mentoring by connecting professionals from among our industry, with young women eager to learn not just, of course, about how to be successful in the industry, how to get a job in the mobile industry, but also how to obtain much needed soft skills, in terms of leadership skills, communication skills, team building skills, etc. And last but not least, both the digital skills trainings and the e-mentoring are complemented with a series of self-paced digital skills courses that are meant to really complement the training that our beneficiaries receive during these one-day digital skills workshops. Now, again, we wanted to ensure that the content we're, of course, providing as part of, be it the digital skills workshop trainings or as part of the self-paced courses, digital skills courses, which we call equals badges, is indeed gender transformative. And so this is how this framework came about, and I'll be happy, of course, to also share the link so you can have a thorough read if you're interested. But the publication took a year to develop, and it was done in partnership, not just, of course, with the 4 co-founders of Equals Her Digital Skills, but many other organizations, which I will show you in a second. So it was truly a joint effort. And as you see, at its core, the guide or the framework is split in 2 parts: a theoretical framework and a practitioner's guide. Now, the theoretical guideline or framework, rather, I should say, it really aims to provide the latest data on the gender digital divide, explain, of course, the role of social and gender norms in perpetuating the divide, the way in which a lack of understanding of normative barriers is limiting the impact of digital skills programs, and of course, the reasons as to why a gender transformative approach is required. The theoretical framework part is split in 3 different subchapters: a principle section, which introduces 4 guiding principles, namely that digital skills education should be gender transformative, contextualized, inclusive, and competency-based. Then there is a chapter on determinants of change, and this section discusses the factors that influence gender and social norms and power dynamics, and why intervention is required at multiple levels to widen and deepen the impact of digital skills programs. And of course, learning outcomes. This section sets out gender transformative learning outcomes, discussing how these go beyond digital skills outcomes. Now, the practitioner's guide, which is probably going to be more relevant for most of you, given that you're probably well familiar already with the digital gender divide, provides really practical guidance to practitioners, governments, private sector, including mobile network operators, and of course, any other stakeholder working to bridge the digital gender divide, on how they can go about practically introducing such an approach in their existing or upcoming digital skills programs. So again, it is split in different chapters. So the first chapter focuses on program design by providing a step-by-step guide to the design of gender transformative digital skills programs. Second chapter introduces, or rather discusses, the promising intervention strategies. So it highlights those intervention strategies that show promise at multiple levels. Then, of course, we have a section on curriculum design. In other words, how do you go about adopting a competency-based approach when you design your curriculum, right? And it provides also guidance on how to introduce a gender transformative approach as well. And then, of course, we have also a section on content design. So, how do you, again, adopt a gender transformative approach in your content design? And it also shows examples, again, that indicate the promise that such an approach holds and the impact you could be achieving. And last but not least, we have a section on evaluation. This is critical because we know that it's very important to assess the impact, right, that such an approach could deliver. And so here we provide an overview of how the evaluation of gender transformative digital skills programs needs to go beyond skills to assess changes in empowerment outcomes, something I also mentioned at the beginning of the call. So with that said, who are the organizations that work with us on these issues, right? So you see, of course, from my screen, the advisory group members that worked with us for the majority of last year on this. I'm sure you recognize most of them. They're incredibly reputable. We counted on the support of the gender team of the World Bank, UNDP, UNICEF, Plan International, GAZ, and the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. So again, we wanted to leverage the expertise of both gender and digital experts for the purpose of this work, alongside existing research. Now, by no means is this publication, of course, all-encompassing, but it's an important first step. It's an important first step because this research and this work didn't exist before. Therefore, it raises awareness, it provides practical guidelines and actions any stakeholder can undertake. And of course, it also makes sure that we take into account both levels of expertise which are needed when you look into this type of work, right? So it's not enough just to have digital experts, much like it's not enough just to have gender equality experts. So we hope that this work, of course, will be extremely beneficial for all of you, but it's an ever-evolving piece of work, so keep this in mind. Now, with that said, I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive into the actual framework, right? So, what is the definition we came up with when it comes to a gender transformative approach? How did we come up with this definition? What does it mean? And what, of course, all of you can do concretely to drive change in this space. So again, as you see from my screen, after much deliberation, we came up with a definition on gender transformation, which basically indicates that such an approach, particularly when it comes to digital skills education, seeks to transform the gender stereotypes, attitudes, norms, and unequal power relations to bridge the gender-digital divide and foster gender equity and equality. Quite a mouthful, lots of terminology there. But as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, at the core, we are looking to not just shift the digital gender divide, but also ultimately the gender inequality as, of course, still a persistent issue that divides our society. Because at the end of the day, that gender inequality translates in digital gender inequality as well. So the two very much go hand in hand. And so when we looked, therefore, into this approach and how you go about, of course, implementing it, that is really what we had in mind. And so for the purpose, of course, of this work, and as you see from the diagram that we came up with to ease perception of this information, we actually adopted the British Columbia Centre of Excellence for Women's Health approach, as you see from my slide, which has already identified a continuum of interventions ranging from gender unequal to gender transformative. And so, of course, we took that approach, which already existed, and we simply applied it to digital skills education. And as you see from the very left, and hopefully that doesn't need much explanation, gender unequal really pertains to perpetuating an approach that perpetuates gender inequality. Now, if you look to the very far right, at the end of the continuum, you see what we mean by gender transformative. And again, I'm sure you've heard terms such as gender sensitive and gender specific, but probably you haven't heard much about gender transformative. And this is why it was important to visualize this difference, because very often we confuse the two and we talk about gender sensitive or specific, but that doesn't go far enough, right? And as we see here, the gender transformative approach really addresses the causes of gender-based digital inequalities and works to transform those harmful gender roles, norms, and relations that continue to hold women and girls back. So really, this is the golden approach, if I may use this term, when it comes to looking into digital skills programming and training that aims to really, tackle these issues and achieve not just the initial objective of bridging the digital skills barrier, but beyond. And as you see on the right, there are three key principles, of course, that we came up with, and that every practitioner or every stakeholder out there needs to follow in order to ensure that they are adopting such an approach. And so, it's important to know, of course, that the term gender transformative is a relative concept, because of course it's relative depending on the context, right, that we are or the program finds itself in, and so gender equity is never fully since gender equity is never fully attained, it's important to know that gender transformation is an ongoing process, right? And what may be transformative in one context may not be transformative in another. And so with that in mind, and as you see from the right, we recommended three key principles. The first one being that those approaches, meaning gender transformative approaches to the design of digital skills education programs, needs to be adopted both inside and outside of the classroom. We know that informal education is just as important as formal education, and therefore it's really important to keep that in mind. Secondly, of course, the education needs to be inclusive, contextualized, and competency-based, particularly when it comes to the design of curricula and content. And last but not least, it's important that, different stakeholders can intervene in the wider ecosystem, because, of course, this is not a problem that any one stakeholder can solve. So the idea really here is to ensure that essentially the program or training that you are designing is not going to perpetuate existing gender inequalities, which sadly we see very often. And it happens, of course, inadvertently. And so that is why it was also important for us to shed light on these issues. Now, quickly moving, of course, to the next slide. And again, I will not spend too much time here, but I wanted to highlight these spheres of influence because really, here we have built on the conceptual frameworks, right? Particularly this conceptual framework that was initially introduced by UNESCO's Cracking the Code framework. And here we have highlighted multiple factors that could constrain or in turn accelerate increases in women's and girls' digital competencies, right? So as depicted in the figure, those multiple factors are either at the institutional or resources level, and they influence social and gender norms, roles, and power dynamics, and those in turn, of course, translate into the gender-digital divide. Now, when we talk about, of course, the institutional factors, as you see, there are many. Here, maybe I'll highlight, of course, very logically that education has been identified as one of the most important drivers of women and girls' use of technology. Of course, it's also important to take into account the mass media portrayal of women and girls' use of technology. Again, UNESCO's Cracking the Code framework emphasizes the role of mass media in shaping women and girls' participation in STEM education and fields. Of course, the topic of technology-facilitated gender-based violence is vast. I'm not going to have time to cover it. But again, this could be a powerful deterrent to women and girls' use of digital technologies. So therefore, it's important to both teach them to how to stay safe online, but also many countries still have not adopted or implemented effective legislation against technology-facilitated gender-based violence. And so, of course, that is keeping women and girls from being online. On the, of course, moving swiftly to the social and individual, of course, factors, Key social factors, of course, that influence women and girls' digital skills development include the attitudes and normative beliefs of powerful people in their social networks, right? Because these are the people whose opinion matter to them the most and who might punish or reward them if they use digital technologies. In many, of course, women and girls' social networks, these people are predominantly male. And that's why, of course, we always insist on educating men and boys along the way, because they are powerful allies, but also they influence women and girls' decisions very often, right? And so it's important they're educated as well as to the advances digital technologies can bring to women and girls' lives. And then key factors at the level of individuals. Here, I want to highlight that women and girls' digital knowledge and skills are affected by various contextual factors. I spoke plenty about social and gender norms, so I'm not going to rehash that again. But these factors essentially influence, their control over resources, right? In terms of digital devices, connectivity, etc. I mean, GSMA has done plenty of research around this, and we know that sometimes a mobile phone device can be access to a mobile phone device for a woman or a girl can be controlled by her male relatives, depending on the cultural circumstances, right? And also, and this is something also that is holding, women and girls back from taking or reaping the full benefits of digital technology and connectivity. And so, with that, again, it's undoubtedly a very complicated issue, but at the same time, a simple one, meaning that by adopting a few simple approaches, you can still enhance and strengthen your digital skills program or intervention. It doesn't mean you have to follow all of the steps recommended in our framework, but even introducing 2 or 3 is going to translate in tremendous impact on the ground. And of course, we would love to hear from you if you have decided to implement this approach as a result of my presentation today. And to conclude, what are the calls for actions that each of you can undertake? And so, as I mentioned, this publication is very much speaking to both public and private sectors. And if you're a government who is participating in this virtual summit, we want you to legislate for women's economic inclusion, right? And we want you to mainstream gender in digital skills education. I already mentioned also the importance of legislating more effectively against technology-facilitated gender-based violence. And certainly also, of course, investing in changing public opinion about women and girls' use of technology. Now, of course, this speaks mainly to governments, but there is also plenty that private sector and other stakeholders group can do, right? So it's very important, of course, to invest in the design and implementation of gender-transformative digital skills education. I mentioned both inside and outside of classrooms. Also, the capacity of educators to deliver such education needs to be increased. It's also very important to bring into these discussions experts on social and gender norms and really work with them when you're designing your digital skills interventions. And of course, it's critical to do gender and equity audits of your digital skills syllabi, learning modules, and content, because that is the only way to identify where your gaps, right, and how you can address them. Now, it goes without saying that it's a lot more difficult to implement a gender transformative approach once you have a program or training in place. It is always better to start from the foundation level, all right, and ensure that you're actually following the principles as you're designing your digital skills intervention, rather than trying to rectify it later. Nonetheless, there are, of course, many useful learnings that can be derived from such audits, right? And can certainly help you improve your approach. And of course, we need certainly more investment also into research around these topics, right? Because we know that patient long-term investment is required to change social and gender norms. I mean, sadly, no country around the world has achieved gender equality as of yet. So it's no surprise that that is in turn translated into the digital gender divide. So I hope this has been useful, and I would welcome any questions via email. And as I mentioned, I will also be happy to supply a link to the report for a deep dive by all of you. Thank you so much.